What happens when the person who used confusion as power suddenly realizes you understand every move? The game changes instantly. The smile can tighten, the tone can shift, and the control they thought was permanent can begin slipping in silence. Most people think they become angry first. Not always. Sometimes the first thing that appears is fear, caution, and a sudden need to study you more closely. Because once you see through the act, the old tools stop working the same way. If you have ever watched someone change the moment you became calmer, stronger, or harder to confuse, stay with me. What you are about to hear can explain years of mixed signals and emotional pressure. Comment clarity if you have started noticing patterns that once seemed impossible to understand. Subscribe if you value peace, strength, and learning how hidden behavior really works. Most people misunderstand the real source of narcissistic power. It is not confidence. It is not charm. It is not intelligence. It is uncertainty. As long as you doubt yourself, question your memory, and keep searching for explanations, they stay in a stronger position. Confusion becomes the fog where influence survives. But the moment that fog clears, something inside the dynamic begins to collapse. The first major shift is internal pressure. When a narcissist realizes you can read the pattern, they often feel exposed. Not exposed to the world, but exposed to you. You are no longer responding only to words. You are reading motives. You are noticing timing. You are connecting actions over time. That can feel deeply threatening to someone who relies on surface impressions. Then comes testing. A sudden compliment, a strange coldness, a casual jab, a dramatic promise. These moments are rarely random. They are probes. They are attempts to see what still affects you. Do you still explain too much? Do you still panic when distance appears? Do you still abandon your peace to restore the connection? Every reaction teaches them something. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. One strong boundary means little if it disappears under pressure. One calm moment means little if chaos can pull you back the next day. But repeated steadiness changes the entire environment. Calm today, calm tomorrow, calm under stress. That is when they understand the old cycle is truly breaking. What if I told you the most unsafe time for a narcissist is not when you argue with them, but when you finally see through them? The second you stop feeling confused is the second they begin to feel uneasy. Because once they notice you can recognize the habits, the deception, and the mind games, the whole dynamic changes. And what comes next often surprises people. If you have ever felt someone change their behavior the moment you became stronger or quieter, stay with me. What you are about to understand could explain years of confusion in your life. If this message is helping you see things more clearly, subscribe now. This channel is dedicated to helping you protect your peace and keep your balance in difficult relationships. Like this video so more people over 60 can find this guidance and comment clarity if you have started noticing the patterns. If this message is helping you see things more clearly, subscribe now. This channel is dedicated to helping you protect your peace and stay steady in the middle of emotional confusion. Like this video so more people over 60 can find this guidance and comment clarity if you have begun seeing the habits for what they are. Sometimes one clear truth can save you from years of doubt. Sometimes one moment of understanding can free you from carrying questions that were never yours to hold in the first place. That is why seeing clearly matters more than reacting loudly ever could. For a long time, one of the greatest strengths of a narcissistic personality is not intelligence, status, or even confidence. It is the mask they wear. A carefully built image designed to make others see what they want to present instead of who they really are. This mask is not always obvious. Sometimes it looks like charm. Sometimes it looks like certainty. Sometimes it even appears as kindness, leadership, or deep care. But beneath it is often a fragile need for control, validation, and constant emotional supply. The outside can seem polished, but the inside often depends on other people believing the performance without asking deeper questions or noticing the repeated contradictions. What many people do not realize is that this mask only works as long as people accept it without doubt. The moment you begin noticing cracks, small contradictions, emotional cycles, or repeated manipulations, something starts to change. You may not speak about it right away. In fact, most people do not. Awareness usually begins in silence. It starts privately inside your own thoughts. You simply begin observing more carefully. You remember old conversations with greater detail. You replay moments that once felt confusing, and suddenly they make sense in a new way. You start connecting actions that once seemed separate and random. What looked like isolated moments now begins to form one clear pattern. You may notice apologies only appear when there is something to gain. You may notice blame somehow always circles back to you no matter what happened. You may notice kindness often arrives only when they sense they are losing influence. You may notice support disappears when your needs become real. You may notice warmth becomes coldness the moment you stop giving constant attention. These small details begin building a much larger picture, and this is where the mask begins to weaken. Not because you exposed them publicly, not because you confronted them with anger, but because inside yourself, you no longer accept the performance as truth. Your mind has quietly moved into a new position. You are no longer watching one event at a time. You are now watching the pattern. This is extremely important because narcissistic behavior often survives when people react to single moments instead of long-term cycles. When you only focus on moments, you remain emotionally trapped. One apology can erase 10 injuries. One compliment can make you forget weeks of disrespect. One dramatic promise can make you question your own memory. But when you see the cycle, everything changes. You stop measuring them by isolated scenes and begin measuring them by repeated behavior. That shift creates emotional distance, and emotional distance often becomes the beginning of freedom and inner stability. When you see the pattern, your responses naturally begin to change. You may stop over-explaining yourself because you realize explanations were never the real issue. You may stop defending yourself against every accusation because you notice the accusations return no matter what you say. You may stop trying to prove your good intentions because you understand your intentions were never being judged fairly in the first place. You may stop chasing understanding from someone committed to misunderstanding you. And even if your behavior changes only slightly, the narcissist often notices it very quickly. They are highly aware of shifts in access, energy, and emotional control. At first, they may not understand what changed. They only sense that something feels different. Your replies may become slower, your emotions may become calmer, your need to convince them may begin to fade. You may appear more grounded during situations that once disturbed you deeply. You may speak less but mean more. You may stop reacting on command. This can feel deeply unsettling to them because the mask depends on predictable responses. If criticism once pushed you into defending yourself and now you simply observe it, they lose a familiar path. If guilt once made you apologize instantly and now you pause, their old rhythm begins to break apart. And when that rhythm starts breaking, they often begin testing the mask more openly. They may exaggerate a story to see if you still believe it. They may deny something obvious to test whether you still accept their version of reality. They may suddenly become extra charming to see if praise still affects you the same way. They may create tension and then offer comfort just to see if you still depend on them emotionally. They may switch between warmth and distance to measure your reactions. These are not always conscious plans, but they are often repeated attempts to regain the emotional position they once held. Sometimes the narcissist may respond by trying to repair the image quickly. This can look like sudden kindness, unexpected praise, temporary cooperation, or gestures that seem out of character. They may become attentive for a short time. They may say the right things. They may offer help they normally withhold. They may appear softer, more understanding, or more present than usual. This is not always a true inner change. Often it is discomfort about losing emotional ground, because if you no longer trust the mask, they must either change their behavior or risk losing influence. And many choose image repair before genuine accountability. But if your awareness continues, something even more powerful begins to happen. You stop needing the mask to fall completely. You stop needing dramatic proof. You stop needing a confession. You stop needing everyone else to agree with your experience. You stop waiting for the perfect final moment that explains everything. Instead, you trust what you repeatedly see. You trust your own pattern recognition. You trust the calm knowledge growing inside you. This is where your power quietly returns, because your peace is no longer dependent on their honesty. Your clarity no longer depends on their admission. Your direction no longer depends on their permission. When you remain steady, calm, and consistent, they begin to recognize that something deeper is happening. Your internal position is strengthening. You are no longer driven only by the fear of conflict or the hope of approval. Another reaction that may appear is intimidation through confidence. They may suddenly act more superior, more dismissive, or more commanding. This is often an attempt to restore the old power balance, not always because they feel stronger, but because they feel less secure and are trying to cover it. That is why their confidence during this stage can feel forced. It is often more performance than true certainty. Many people misunderstand this stage. They think, maybe I caused this. Maybe I became too distant. Maybe I should explain myself better. But often what they are witnessing is not damage they created. It is resistance being noticed. Resistance not through fighting, but through self-respect. And self-respect can feel like rejection to someone used to unlimited access. There is also another process happening beneath the surface. When narcissistic people feel understood too clearly, they may experience something close to exposure. Not public exposure, but internal exposure. The sense that someone now recognizes their patterns, motives, and repeated methods of control. That feeling can trigger defensive behavior. Defensiveness may appear as anger because anger feels stronger than vulnerability. Coldness may replace connection because distance feels safer than being understood too deeply. More criticism may appear because criticism can redirect attention away from their own behavior. These responses are often less about intentionally hurting you and more about restoring inner stability in the only way they know. Sadly, their version of stability often depends on regaining control. That is why your response during this stage matters so much. Not a dramatic response, not revenge, not emotional collapse, just consistency and calm self-command. Emotional value comes from shared softness, trust, and mutual care. Psychological value often comes from recognizing boundaries. It comes from seeing that certain behaviors no longer bring the same result. It comes from realizing some lines cannot be crossed without consequences, such as distance, silence, or reduced access. And people who recognize boundaries usually behave differently from people who believe none exist. Your calm strength may not transform their inner character, but it often changes their calculations. Because if they understand you will no longer tolerate certain cycles, they must decide whether to adjust their behavior or lose access. And access is often deeply important to them in ways many people do not fully understand. They may begin noticing what no longer triggers you. They may watch how you respond to criticism. They may test whether your boundaries are temporary or firm. They may even become quieter in conversations, not because they have become emotionally safe, but because they are gathering information. They are trying to understand how to approach a person who no longer responds in the old, familiar ways. That alone marks a major shift. In the past, they may have spoken more freely, crossed lines more casually, or pressured you more openly. Often they did so because they felt secure that nothing meaningful would change if they did. But once they notice awareness in you, they may begin weighing risk. Because awareness creates consequences. Not always dramatic consequences, but real ones. Less access, less emotional reaction, less influence, less automatic closeness. And when someone begins losing these things, they often become more careful. That is why some people notice something strange. The same person who once dismissed their feelings may now choose words more carefully. The same person who once started conflict easily may now avoid certain topics. The same person who once acted boldly may now seem more measured. This does not always mean deep change. Often it means adaptation to a new environment. Calm people are often very difficult to manipulate because manipulation depends on emotional extremes. It feeds on urgency, confusion, fear, guilt, and the need to fix things quickly. But when those doors begin to close, the old methods lose force. So, if they begin watching you more carefully instead of attacking directly, it often reveals something simple but powerful. They are no longer sure they can move you the way they once could. And once that certainty is gone, the entire dynamic changes. What once felt automatic becomes uncertain. What once felt easy becomes difficult. What once controlled you no longer does. This journey is not about revenge, proving a point, or winning a struggle. It is about self-respect, emotional balance, and protecting the calm you worked hard to build. Some people may never explain their behavior. Some may never fully understand the effect they had, but your healing does not depend on their awareness. Your growth does not require their permission. Your future does not need their approval. Real strength is quiet. It is the ability to stay grounded when others try to create confusion. It is the wisdom to notice patterns without becoming trapped in them. It is the courage to choose peace over chaos and truth over false hope. The moment you stop abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable is the moment your life begins to open again. So let this be what you carry forward. Protect your energy. Trust what repeated actions reveal. Honor your boundaries and keep choosing what brings you peace. Because the clearest sign of growth is not that they changed, it is that you did.